Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video blog for the 2nd of June 2016. There is a lot going on out there, so let's jump right in. First of all, as you know, along the North Carolina Outer Banks, Tropical Depression Bonnie, renamed, if you want to call it that, this morning. Advisories reinitiated is a better way to put it. Center of circulation as of 11 a.m. today, just south and east of the Cape Hatteras area. This is what it looks like on a visible satellite picture, and the center of the system sitting about right in here. And you can see fairly well organized low-level circulation with this, feeder bands trying to come in and provide energy to the system, decent upward motion to the convection, which you can see all through here, which is equating to some fairly heavy rain along parts of the Outer Banks in extreme southeast Virginia. We can see that here on the radar shot along Highway 12 down here, 158 farther to the north, larger highway system. Luckily, this is confined to the extreme eastern part of North Carolina and southeast Virginia. Not so lucky for those folks, of course. A miserable weather day out there more than likely, but at least it's not widespread, and this is heading out to sea finally, and we'll be able to be rid of this before all is said and done. It may be upgraded to Tropical Storm Bonnie once again. Hurricane hunters out there now finding some evidence of tropical storm force winds. Now, why did it come back from the dead, so to speak? We know that it made landfall here in South Carolina, fizzled out a little bit, remained kind of meandering around the coast, wobbled its way up through here, and then it'll eventually head out to sea. Well, we notice the center of circulation today and yesterday was located around this area where the Gulf Stream moves through, and the water temperatures within the Gulf Stream are not only warm in the low 80s, but there's also just enough of the upper ocean heat content that we look for, and I'm going to point an arrow to it, which will help to show you that. It's right in there. Take that away, okay, right there. And you notice it's at the bottom end of the scale, yes, but it's more than zero. So there's a little extra energy sitting right in here, just off the North Carolina coast, within the Gulf Stream, and this is where Bonnie was able to reinvigorate and maybe even taking advantage of some of the warmer water in the Pamlico Sound. Hey, warm water is warm water, right? And if there's energy available, these systems will take advantage of it. And if we look at the upper level winds, right up through here where Bonnie is located, not much wind shear going on, just enough of anticyclonic flow or light upper level winds in a small enough geographic area over the top of the system for it to blossom up, and there is the result. So this is what it looks like from a vorticity standpoint at the 5,000 foot level. Nice and round in its appearance, and we saw that on the satellite imagery. Fairly symmetrical overall, even though it doesn't have tremendously deep convection. It's not a hurricane, but it does have the energy signature at the 850 millibar level of the atmosphere. The spin in the atmosphere is bundled around the common low pressure area, and there you go. Now we have Tropical Depression Bonnie, maybe even Tropical Storm Bonnie by 5 o'clock Eastern today. We'll see out there in the Atlantic. Now let's switch over to the Eastern Pacific, where we have Invest Area 91E still festering down here, well to the southwest of the Mexican coastline and the Baja Peninsula, still trying to organize itself, and I think once it does so, it'll probably become a hurricane. I say probably, there's a decent chance overall, and it is going to move away from the land masses as it's doing now, and this is what that looks like on the 5-day graphical outlook here. Again, heading away, none of the models really showing any turn back towards the Mexican coastline, so that is not an issue, fortunately, for that area. Now, in the Atlantic Basin, switching back to that area, the 5-day graphical outlook map for here also shows the potential for development in the Gulf of Mexico. And I want to analyze this a little bit. Let's go back and look at this real quick for Bonnie. Remember this shape right here, this circular appearance to the vorticity signature of the atmosphere. And if we look at the upper level winds again, we notice right now those are screaming across the Caribbean Sea down here on the order of 50 knots or higher in some cases, 40 to 60 knots, and that certainly is not conducive for development. So this is what the GFS, the Global Forecast System model from this morning, was indicating. This is the current setup, the initial conditions, hour 0 right here, and here's Bonnie in the 5,000 foot level, 850 millibar level of the atmosphere. Remember, the atmosphere is divided up into layers. You have the surface. We have 850 millibars. You know, there's all kinds of different layers. 500 millibars is roughly the middle part of the atmosphere, at least where the sensible weather occurs. And that's about 18,000 to 20,000 feet or so. And then you have the upper part of the atmosphere, 200 millibars, and on up towards the stratosphere. I like to look at the surface, obviously, it's where we live. The 850 millibar level, which is what we're looking at here, roughly 5,000 feet up. And then the 200 millibar level, where the upper level winds really come into play. And then occasionally the 500 millibar level, which is a lot of where the steering mechanisms take place, especially for well-developed hurricanes. So with all that being said, let's watch what happens here as I go through the frames. Again, this is Bonnie on the initial conditions, and then we're going to watch what happens down in here, and then eventually up through Florida, towards Florida from the Gulf of Mexico. So let's go through the frames. These are every 3 hours. We'll go out 24 hours to tomorrow morning. You see there's Bonnie exiting the scene. Gulf Stream runs right up through here, so this may intensify back into Tropical Storm Bonnie, if not already. And then we see the beginnings of this moisture surge, this energy, trying to make its way and pile in to the Caribbean Sea here over time, and it tries to consolidate from there. We're going out to 48 hours into time, which is right here. We see Bonnie finally leaving the scene completely, and it'll scoot on out to sea and not be an issue any longer. And now we see the beginnings of this 850 millibar energy coming on the scene down in the Caribbean Sea. Move on out into time to hour number 72. So this would be valid on Sunday morning. And you see, we start to see the curvature of these wind barbs in here, and the 850 millibar energy is trying to spiral in and consolidate, but it's not doing a very good job as of yet, probably because of land interaction here with Belize and the Yucatan Peninsula proper. As we move on through time to 96 hours into the future, now it starts to look a little bit more interesting. Certainly a counterclockwise look to the system. But remember what I showed you up here with Bonnie sitting off the North Carolina coast today, where it was nice and round? This isn't. This is much more amorphous in structure, is a good way to put it. It's not consolidated. It's got these different lobes of energy coming off. Something over here, pieces over here. It's spread out. The energy is spread out over a large area, typical of a hybrid, not totally bundled tropical storm. And the best way to put it, this is not what the makings of a hurricane look like, for example. That's not impossible for this to become a hurricane. We never say never, but this doesn't look like that so far early in the model predictions right now. So if we go out all the way to day 5, this is what the 850 millibar level looks like. A little bit more concentrated, but again, you have these spokes of energy peeling off. You know, it's not the best looking system. And then if you go and look a little deeper, dig deeper, and we look at the 200 millibar level way up in the atmosphere where the outflow is controlled, if you will, the system will be located right in here. And look what's happening. Very strong upper level winds going right over the top. And that tells me this would be much more of what we call a lopsided system, where, hypothetically speaking, if we had the low pressure center sitting here, most of the weather would be on the east side of it. Pretty strong onshore flow. Definitely the possibility of severe weather for parts of Florida, heavy rain here along the peninsula. Don't want to downplay this for a significant weather event that it has the potential to be, but it is far different than a hurricane tracking through here and making landfall. I don't see the makings of that, but I do see the makings of a rather nasty part of next week, with the possibility of straight line wind damage, a fast moving system in the atmosphere, thunderstorms, heavy rain. I mean, it's, you know, you pick your poison. They have their hazards. And even though you might not have a full-fledged hurricane coming, there will be enough inclement weather and things to monitor that it's worth it to, you know, certainly stay on top of this. And we'll do so on these video discussions that you can take advantage of on Hurricane Pro and HD. All right, well, that's all I've got for today. Again, I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. That's my website. As always, thank you for tuning in for Hurricane Pro in HD. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.